Welcome to part 5. Now I love the Django admin. It's one of Django's great benefits is having an admin sort of auto-generated for you with quite a lot of configuration. But out of the box, it is not the best. You definitely run into problems when you have bigger databases where you have relationships being set. For instance, if for the selecting an album, this is just a basic drop-down box. Imagine I had 1 million albums in the database. The amount of just like HTML that is going to have to be rendered in this and let alone painted is going to be ridiculous, and I'm not going to be able to find what I'm looking for. That's like one example. It's also a little kind of old and outdated kind of thing. They finally added a dark mode by default, which is nice. There we go, light mode, dark mode. But we could do a bit better here. So we're going to install a new package, and it's called Django Admin Interface. So we're going to pip install Django Admin Interface. And as we hopefully remember, we want to go to our requirements file because we just manually installed something. And we want to make sure that the version here, and just kind of look through here for what version it was, is included. So we'll do Django Admin Interface, and then just make sure you replace this last hyphen with equals equals. And I like to try and keep these in somewhat alphabetical order. That's just personal preference. The other thing we want to actually install, actually we're going to install a few things here while we're here. So we're going to do Django Admin Autocomplete Filter. And okay, successfully installed this. So let's grab that, put it there, and do equals. And just while we're at it, because it's kind of related, kind of not, we're also going to install Django Filter. Pip install Django-Filter. And let's see, there we go, successfully installed Django Filter, and we'll put this down here. All right, now we're going to go to our apps.py, not that one, but the apps within our settings, and we need to make sure we are including a couple of these things. So, and this is, you wouldn't be able to necessarily figure this out on your own. You would, look at the docs for these sorts of things, or, watch my tutorial. But basically, when we install the autocomplete filters, we have to put in our installed apps somewhere before Django, admin auto filters. And we also need to put in admin interface. And we need to put in color field, and you'll see why in a bit. Now, color field we didn't install, but it actually came with part of admin interface. So we're just going to include those three there, and we should be good. Okay, so let's actually go python manage.py, run server, and see what happens. We are going to see a little interesting thing. You have 30 unapplied migrations. Why is that? And it's because this package actually comes with some migrations in it. In fact, 30 of them. So not only do our own apps have migrations, but ones we install might as well. And that's why it's also like important, like, install from trustworthy sources, do your research, do your due diligence, make sure the migration file you're running isn't just like drop all tables, that kind of thing, because that would obviously cause problems. I've used these a lot. I'm not worried about them at all, but don't take my word for it. Look at the source code, and don't just install an app on production without testing it, obviously. So python manage.py migrate. So we don't have to make the migrations, but we want to migrate those. And you'll see they're all within this app called admin interface. That's this one right here. And we're good. Okay, now we will just run the server, and we won't see that issue. And let's go back here. Now look at this. We have a slightly more pretty admin, in my opinion, a little bit cleaner. And like I was saying before, we still have this drop down here, but look what we can do. Now that we have this installed, we can actually go, and there's a new property we can add called autocomplete fields. And here we can actually put track, or I guess, what was it? It was album. And we can make this an autocomplete field. And we get this other warning. And the reason for that is autocomplete fields are going to be, they're searchable. And in order to do that, we actually have to define some search fields for this. So we're going to go to album, and we're actually going to go search fields equals. And in this case, if we look at the album itself, what do we have? We should probably allow them to search the title of it, right? So I'll just put title here, and we'll close that. And we'll come back here. And now when we actually open this up, we have a search field. So I can actually start searching for things. So this will use pagination. It will only give you a few at a time. And it's like autocomplete. So it's really great. And then you won't run into that issue, if your database is really large. We can also do the same autocomplete fields for tags here. Now, similarly for tag, we also have to give it a search field. So we'll do search field equals name, I believe is what the tag is called. And we'll save that. And now we actually kind of see it like this. It's a lot nicer, and I can search for ones. I can also still add a new one. So although for some reason that's not working, probably just because I'm running on localhost or something. But basically I can, remove these. This is a lot cleaner and nicer than sort of this long list. There we go. We can add it, save, continue editing. Everything's good. Okay, so we have better admin. And what also is cool is in here, we actually have this thing called admin interface themes. And this is something, you could, definitely unregister from your admin if you wanted to, if you don't want to give people control, but it's actually pretty handy. And I like to use it to actually kind of set a different color for, between production and, your stage server and stuff like that. So you really know you're in that server. But, you can change the colors, and that's why we need the color field. You can change, the branding, upload a different logo, all that kind of stuff. So that, if you do ship this and, your client gets access, it can look really like their own, a brand with their own logo and all that stuff. And you can actually create multiple themes, and then actually just by checking which one is active, you can, kind of toggle between them. Okay, so that's good. Another thing, and just because it kind of reminded me, talking about unregistering this, I want to show you how to remove different things from your admin. So we're going to do this just right in here because it's just a place we know will be loaded when the admin's loaded. And what I want to do is actually I want to unregister this groups, because we're not going to be making use of groups the way we're going to be building stuff. It's a really helpful thing for administration purposes. I'm sure there's lots of values of it, but right now it's kind of just getting in the way. It's like, I don't really have a purpose for this. So how do you remove something from the admin? And similarly, you could, do the same with the admin theme one I was talking about. But basically, all we need to do is go admin.site.unregister, and then we have to unregister a specific model. So in this case, we want to unregister group. Now, it has no idea what group is, so we actually are just going to import that by, this is within the django.contrib.auth.models, import group, and then we're just going to unregister group. And we'll just refresh, and then we'll see it's actually gone from here. So we could do the same with themes, that kind of thing. But neither here nor there. Just wanted to show that little tidbit. Now, if you've been paying attention, you've noticed we've wiped our database a whole bunch of times, and that's kind of a process. It's common, especially in development. But as we get more and more things, it takes a lot of work to get the super user made, and albums and artists and tags and all that kind of stuff. So sometimes it's nice to actually create what's called a fixture. And this allows you to sort of have some sample data. And this is definitely good for development. It has its places in production too. For instance, if you had something like tags or genres that, are kind of, in a sense, hard-coded, that you want to just quickly import and not have to go, fixtures are a great way to do that. So to create a fixture, first what we do is we run Python manage.py, dump data, and then we have to pick our app name. So we're going to do content, and then the model, content.whatever model. So let's do tag, for instance, content.tag. And some fancy stuff I like to do, just so you can do indent for, so that you actually get JSON that's indented, because this is going to become JSON. And then we're actually going to put it in a folder called fixtures / and then I like to do, the name of the app and then the name of the model. So we'll actually just do content.tag.json. Okay. Now I don't have this fixtures folder, and I'm not sure if I need it before I run it. So I'm just going to create it to be safe. So we're going to create something called fixtures right in the root. You could also, put them in each app if you wanted to. It doesn't really matter as long as they're somewhere. So we can go Python manage.py, dump data, content.tag, and then fixtures. And we'll see in here, we should have a fixture now, content.tag.json. And this is basically just an array of JSON objects that, map to our data. So that's cool. Let's do the same for a couple other ones. So let's do content.track, and we'll just make this say track. We'll do the same for album. And artist, I think, is the only one I'm missing in our custom models. Okay, and then let's actually make one for our user. So let's go instead of content, this is actually within we have to remember where this is. I believe it's within django.contrib.auth.models.user. And then we'll call this, I'll just call this auth.user for now. Let's see if that will even work. Oops. Okay, for the user, you actually just do auth.user, not django.contrib.auth.models.user. Auth.user is all you need. So now we have all these things here and everything's great. Okay, and you'll see my password, it's not actually the password itself. It's this like hashed thing. So that's all good. We have our fixtures here. Now, say we deleted our database, as we've done a million times before. Now I'll show you how to import them. Okay, so we could import them one by one, but what we can actually do is go python manage.py, load data, and then look inside the fixtures folder, fixtures / star.json. Actually, the problem with doing that is they're actually just going to get loaded in some sort of random random option. So we need to sort of do these in a correct order. My apologies. Actually, the reason it didn't work is I deleted the database, but we never actually ran the migrations again. So I'm just going to delete database, and then we need to migrate just to get our actual database schema set up. Then we can run basically load data within our fixtures directory star.json. And we'll see it installed 5 objects from fixtures. Now chances are we still did get logged out. Let's run the server. And let's log in again. And I am in, which is great. So my user obviously existed from that fixture, and also we have our tracks and stuff. So yeah, fixture is super handy. Saves you a lot of time just mucking about. And wanted to point out that it exists, because if you didn't know it exists, you probably would maybe try and write a Python script that would just create this, but Django's already got you. All right, the next thing I want to show is how can we create our own custom user model, all while still taking advantage of all the great stuff that Django has in its auth library. So similarly to a few things in this series, this is also something I would generally do right off the bat on a project very early on after kind of configuring the settings. But I figured there was kind of some more important things we had to get out of the way, learning wise. So in order to do this, the best practice is we're actually going to create another new app. So we'll use python manage.py start app, and I'm going to call this app access. You can call this something else. In a perfect world, I'd call it maybe auth, but we actually can't use auth because auth is already a registered namespace in Django. So I like to use the word access. Okay, now in here, we are going to go to our models, and we're going to create our own user model here. So we're going to call it user, and it's going to actually inherit our abstract model. So we'll need to import that. So from common.models, import abstract model. And so we're going to have that, but we're also going to also inherit Django's abstract base user. And this is they've set this up in a way so that we can easily override and kind of make our own user while getting the advantage of this. So from django.contrib.auth.models, we're importing abstract base user. And then in here, we can basically create the things that we want. For instance, maybe we want to have an email. And for this, we can use models.email field. And in this case, we'll give it a max length of 125. We want these to be unique. We don't want 2 users to have the same email. So we'll do unique equals true. And we want this to be a DB index as well, because it's pretty common that we're going to be looking up users by this. A lot of the time when you have unique equals true, chances are you probably want it to be a DB index, but really the rule should be, am I going to be looking up users by their email through the ORM, through the API, through whatever, then yes, DB index true. Okay, we also, maybe want to have a name for our user. So we'll use models.charField, and we're going to give it a max length of 64, and we are going to allow it to be blank. We also need to give it a password. Users need a password, so I'll just put this in here. So password, it'll be a char field, max length 128. That is all fine. Then let's have a Boolean field tracking if they're active or not. So we'll have is active, and this is going to be models.boolean field. And let's just do default equals true. All users are active, but we could, through the admin, essentially deactivate them. Similarly, let's have a flag for whether the user is an admin. And by default, that will be false. Users will not be admins unless we purposely do it. And then maybe, our users also have a bio, for instance. And here we could use models.text field, and let's allow it to be blank. Okay. Now, because we're inheriting this, something we have to set is what its username field is. And the username field is essentially what is used kind of for like its login purposes. And in this case, we are going to do email. All right, so we have that. And then we also need some properties on this because if we actually looked at the Django user, we'll see it has some fields. It has a field called isStaff. And in our case, we're just going to make a property called isStaff. Now what a property is, 'cause I don't think we've done this yet, it's essentially a function, like a method within a class, except when you decorate it with @property, when you're calling it in another file, you don't actually go, is staff like this. You actually just call it as if it's a property, and it will compute it. Now, something with properties is they can never have any parameters. So in this case, we don't need any because we're just the parameters really being used are within the user itself, and we would actually just return if self dot is admin. So if they are an admin, they are considered staff. We can also have something similar for super user, which is slightly different. Super user is basically like a super admin, which is the users we've been creating every time we've been, kind of wiping our database. And we'll just call that is super user like this. And we'll also use admin for that, just to keep things simple. So all of our admins are super users, and all of our super users are admins. Then there's some other functionality we need for admin purposes because the user model just requires this. We need a function for has permission. And this takes the parameter self, the permission, and the object, which is none by default. And in this, we're just going to say, yes, they have the permission if they are, active and they are an admin. So this is just, something the Django admin uses to know, like, can this user do this? And because we're not dealing with setting up different roles and groups and all that kind of stuff, we're just going to be like, yeah, if they're active and an admin, they're good to go. And then I'm just going to paste these in. They're not really that relevant, but kind of same thing. Basically, like you can, set permissions on a app by app basis for people. And then we just need to have this returning all permissions. We're keeping permissions very basic, but you can obviously, modify these as you see fit. Lastly, we just need some meta here. So we'll do our class meta like usual, and verbose name is going to be equal to user, and verbose name plural is users. Okay, so we have that. Now, something else we need to deal with is what's called a manager. I know we haven't gotten to the ORM yet, but when you are, dealing with stuff, a lot of the time, a call might be, users equal user.objects.all, and that will give me all the users back. This objects thing exists on all models, and it's really a reference to its model manager, which there's a default one that Django provides. But we can actually create our own manager that allows us sort of like optimize this in certain ways, add some extra functionality to it, et cetera, et cetera. So we're actually going to create that model manager, and we're going to call it the user manager. And it's actually going to extend something else that comes with Django, which is the base user manager. So we still get all the stuff that the base user manager has, but we can sort of override some of our own things. And for this, I'm just going to paste in something and explain it. So we can ignore this first one, but basically we need to supply a create user so that we can actually have a create user function, and the Django admin and the CLI and stuff kind of require this existing. So we're creating this, and what we're going to require is the passwords passed in, and then other keyword arguments, which could be, its name, its bio, all that kind of stuff. And what we want to do is just force, is admin to false just to be extra safe, and then run this self.createUser, which is this private method we created here. And how this works, it's again expecting a password and those various kwargs. And because we don't actually want to store the password, we actually use this user.setPassword, which exists on our abstract base user. And this will actually do all the stuff to salt it into the database, do that funky looking thing, which just to remind you, what's actually stored in the database for like a password is this crazy thing. That's not really my password. My password is like 6 characters, really boring. But it's basically being hashed and salted so that, it's impossible to recover. And that's just normal, password hashing. So that's why we need to do this, because we don't want to just set, the password. We want to actually apply it. And that's what set password will do. So I've created this. And then for super user, it's the same as this, except, and this is what the that CLI tool uses when we're running Python manage.py, create super user. We want to set the admin to true and then pass everything through as normal. So lastly, what we need to do, and I like to do this before the properties, after the fields, we do objects. So we're going to override basically this objects right here that a user has, and we're going to use our user manager, just like that. All right, so although we have these great fixtures, we do have to delete one of our fixtures because this one will no longer work because we've actually changed the way we're going to be dealing with users. So I'm going to delete that. A couple other things we need to do. We need to tell Django what is our user, because by default it'll still be using the one that we've been using all along. So we just go to our settings, and thinking a good place to put this, because I've already broken this all up, we'll go project settings. I think this is kind of part of access, or no, part of auth. Auth makes more sense. So actually right at the top of this file, what I want to set is auth user model, and we're going to equal access, so the name of our app, dot user, the name of the model. So that's just a reference to this. Okay, I'm just gonna close my little example there. And now, I know we have these great fixtures and stuff, which is gonna make this a lot easier, but we are gonna delete our database yet again, because we've made this pretty drastic change. So I'm just gonna do that. And let's just see if this works. Python manage.py, make migrations. And yes, we did miss one thing. So we have to remember our settings for apps. We also have to include our access.apps.access config, because we made a new app. We just forgot to do that. Let's try this again. So we created the user, and then we're going to run migrate. Okay, cool. Now let's actually import those fixtures again. So I'm actually going to go to my make file, and we're just going to create something in here called import fixtures. And I'm going to look in my history here for this, which is Python manage.py load data fixtures. So let's run that. So I can now just go, instead of remembering that, I can just go Mike import fixtures. Okay, cool. So we are importing them, and now let's make run, and let's go back to our admin, and we will see that we are logged out. However, we cannot log in because we deleted that fixture. It wouldn't have worked anyways. So we actually still, hopefully for the last time, need to run our Python manage.py create super user, and let's see if anything goes wrong. It's possible it will. I might have missed one thing, but now it's asking me for an email instead of a name, and that's because we've actually set email as the username field. So we'll just do my email address and give it a password, give it a password. Okay, looks like we're good. So let's make run. Let us try to log in with, again, it says email now, not password. So it's all kind of being figured out, which is cool. And I think I did Tyler. And here we are. Now we don't have the users in here, and that's because we actually need to register this now. So let's go to our access admin, admin.py. And we're going to go from .models import user. And now for this, although we could do this the normal way, what I actually want to do is import something from Django. So we're going to just right here, from django.contrib.auth.admin, import user admin, except I don't want to call it user admin because that's what I want to call my thing. So I can actually do an alias. I can say as base user admin. And the reason we're doing this is we want to actually register this still kind of the same way. We want to register our user model, and we'll make a class called user admin. But instead of extending admin.admin, we're going to be extending that base user admin. And the reason for that is there's actually some great things in there, such as the password change that we would have to build ourselves if we didn't do this. Okay, so now we also need to set up a few things here. So I'm just gonna, we've kind of gone over these, so I'm gonna work on just putting them in and walk through. So we're gonna add some search fields, email and name, cool. We're also gonna add some read-only fields because ID, UUID, created, updated at, similar to before, we can't have. We're gonna edit our list display to essentially have an email, name, is active, is admin, and created at. That's what we wanna show in sort of that list mode. Then we can also add some filtering because we have some great filterable things such as is active, is admin, not created at, I don't want that. We're going to set our filter horizontal because the base user admin already has something, and I think that's where we're getting this error. Yeah, filter horizontal refers to groups. We're just going to set it to empty so it doesn't try and access that. Then this is a new thing, date hierarchy. This is something we can do on any, not just the user admin, but any, and allows us to kind of add some cool like calendar tool to actually, go through the dates of, in this case, when they were created at. And then let's actually set our ordering as well to negative created at. So let's just see if that got rid of these errors. So far, so good. Go back here, we now see users, and we have our lovely user here. And okay, we have another, another problem here that I need to also fix. Because the default based user admin is looking for things like first name, last name, is staff, all that kind of stuff that we don't actually have. So to fix this, we just have to kind of edit our field sets. So I'm not going to type this all out because it's pretty tedious, but I'll walk you through it real quick. And let's just put this in. I just need to get rid of a couple things here, which is for a future time. I think that's it. Save that. Let's see. All right, there we have it. So essentially, we just added some field sets. So what we wanted to have, we're overriding basically what the default one will be doing because we don't have some of the things that the other base user has. So we have their email and bio and all that kind of stuff. We have a place for as admin. And something else that's cool is I've also added add field sets. So these are field sets when you're creating a new one. For instance, there's no need to really show like the ID and UUID and when they're created at if it's new. So just to show you that, if we actually just go add user, we only have email, name, and bio, which is kind of cool. And then yeah, it's all set and good to go. I realize there's one thing in our ad that we need, which is password. Let's just try this out. Oops. Okay, so let's just do test at test.com, test guy, password 123. That might cause an issue. 1, 2, 3. Just realized a small mistake. We actually don't put password. We put password 1 and password 2. This is kind of like your password and then confirming it. And Django will automatically know, give you these sort of rules, and it will do that process to set it properly. So we said remember that. So I'll just do test at tylersavery.com and hope that this works. Hello. It's 1, 2, 3, and then let's just do a password. And I'm not going to make them admin, but we'll make them active. We'll save, and now we have the user, and it goes to the normal thing. And you'll see when we have password in the edit mode, it doesn't actually, tell you the password. That would be a big, security issue. Instead, you actually would have to go to this form here, which it links you to, and you can reset, that person's password for them. Okay, so there you have it. All right, so yeah, we've added the custom user model now. Again, something I like to do earlier than most of the things we did here. It's usually the first model I work on, but I think it would have been kind of confusing to learn that before just learning how to make your own basic model. But now we have that, and I think we're in a good spot for whatever I have planned next.